Knicks released their schedule for the 2025-26 season, and there's no major surprises, but I do have a bunch of questions that need to be answered. If this is going to be the so-called team of destiny to make it to the championship, hit that rock. Before we get started, make sure to hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit the dark notification bell to get each and every notification for each and every video. It's your boy Jimo Legion Knicks. Let's get it. So salute to everybody who checked out my last video regarding the new look defense of the Knicks with the hire Brandon O'Connor and what I think him and Mike Brown are going to try to cook up for the Knicks this next season. Again, I apologize for the long form videos. I'm trying to make them shorter, a lot more succinct, but just as impactful as I would a short video, but I appreciate you guys staying in there. So hopefully this video is a lot more shorter, but we got to talk about this. The New York Knicks release the 2025-26 schedule, where I don't think there's so many crazy surprises, right? We start off the season playing against the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that we got mollywopped by last year in the regular season, losing to 0 or having a record of 0-4 against them. This is a team in Cleveland Cavaliers. Look, man, they have so much fluke to them. Jarrett Allen ain't no damn center for the playoffs. That dude turns into mini-me. Ty Jerome was no longer with the team. He's with the Grizzlies right now. Stunk in the playoffs. Darius Garland does a Darius Garland thing. Look, Donovan Mitchell, that's my son. Max Strus is solid, I ain't gonna lie. But that team, they don't scare me. And I feel like the first game we played them last year, we should have won. But, you know, Jalen Brunson had to go hero ball, and things fell apart in the fourth quarter. But I can't wait to play this team. So, look, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who we start off with, some other so-called tidbits with this, with the release of the schedule. The Knicks are tied for the second, or tied for the most televised games. Unfortunately, the 30 billion damn platforms to freaking sign up for, which is freaking annoying. You might as well just have cable again. Message. But tied for 34. So it's gonna suck that you have to. Hey man, you got to go to some deep dark secret places, get your get some of your Nick content, some of your Nick games. Excuse me, let me say. But that just snitch. Anyway, I didn't. I ain't no snitch over here. But yeah, Knicks got a tie for the 34th most nationally televised games. No games after 11 p.m. next year. Only 2 games at 10 p.m. and they run both back to back versus Sacramento, as well as, and then the Golden State Warriors the next day. No more 11 p.m. games. Wow, Adam Silver, you're finally getting it. People on the West Coast don't want to stay up that late to watch these games. No offense to the people on the East Coast, but they understand. They should know it. We gotta run these games a little bit quicker in a day, just because everybody else is in front of us. Thank you, Adam Silver, for putting 2 and 2 together. Longest homestand, 7 games near the beginning of the season, from November 2nd versus Chicago to the 14th of November. Now, 6 of those games come against some of the worst teams in the league. Got Charlotte 2 times, Brooklyn 2 times, Utah, Washington. But we've lost to some of those teams. Charlotte, remember the game last year where we for some reason we were in a nasty spell, and we were getting our butts handed to us. I forget exactly the run, but it was a run of some pretty crappy teams, and we ended up losing to Charlotte in one of those games. We lost to Utah in one of those games. I believe it was the first game against Utah, where Cat inexplicably just started taking a whole bunch of threes from the outside. Despite the last 3 games, he was absolutely destroying going to the basket. But everybody was playing poo-poo that game. And then Washington is another annoying team. I think we should be able to handle. I really don't see any losses coming against Washington, even though Marcus Smart tried to give us a scare last year with his performance, and he's like, all right, come on, y'all should be mollywopping us. But I wish the Knicks had Marcus Smart some years ago. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Longest road trip, 2 5-game road trips, one from November 17th to the 26th, and then another from March 6th to the 13th. And one of those road trips come after the Cup. Now, some interesting tidbits, and I apologize, I can't remember exactly who put this out. Someone tweeted this out, but they put out the information. Salute to the platform, I apologize. But team back-to-backs versus opponent back-to-backs, the Knicks are actually they will play one more back-to-back than the collective number played by the teams they face. But they'll be in the middle of the pack regarding playing teams back-to-back. Right around the 19th in the league at 14-13. Right in between the Magic and the Lakers, who has the most team back-to-backs versus opponent back-to-backs. You have the Nuggets at 16-12, and then you have the Mavericks at the lowest at 14-18, which is interesting. But again, I apologize for not being able to find exactly who. I forget the platform put it out, but salute to them. I'm not trying to. I didn't take credit for this. I'll put the graphic. That is not my information, but salute to them. Then to get to the Cup games, we start the Cup games around. We play Chicago first? Yeah, October 31st against the Bulls. We play the Bulls, Miami Heat, Hornets, and the Bucks. This should be a very winnable group for the Knicks. Now, last year we lost to Trae Young and the Hawks. Remember the whole dice game crap, which should not happen. But the Bulls are a young team. I mean, they're building around Buzelis and freaking Josh Giddey. Levine's going, DeMar's going. That should be a relatively easy team to handle, relatively speaking. Miami Heat. That's another team. Look, Bam Adebayo always gives us issues. But we were able to, especially when Jimmy Butler was going, we were able to kind of manhandle them. I mean, Cat had his way against the Miami Heat for the most part. I'm not really scared of the Miami Heat. And they're trying to get rid of guys like Rozier. I believe they just traded Highsmith for some picks. They did pick up my son, Norman Powell, which is extremely annoying. And unfortunately, I actually think he's going to do really well with the Heat. But other than that, they really don't scare me like that. And then you got the Hornets. And then the Bucks. Well, obviously without Dame Lillard. Trying to build with Kyle Kuzma. Crazy enough, we've struggled against Dame Lillard with the Bucks. Or not struggled, but we've had some losses against them spanning over the last two seasons. It's just some annoying losses against the Bucks. But again, I think the Knicks, this should be a very doable group for the Knicks. I don't foresee the Knicks having a whole bunch of issues handling this group in the Cup games. Now, let's get to the real good stuff, man. Look, the schedule is what it is. We can get to the so-called win-loss total at the end of the video, but I have some questions that I need to pose out there, right? And just looking at Mike Brown's history, how the Knicks have been moving the last 2 seasons, some important things we have to discuss. When does Mike Brown make changes to the lineups? Now, back in the day, Tom Thibodeau wait 20, 25 games to make changes to the lineups. Everyone infamously remembers, put him Derrick Rose more so into the actual rotations, not to say he started. Kemba Walker getting moved out, and Fournier eventually as well too. But Kemba Walker more so because his knee was finito. Even though people complain that IQ should have been starting. So Tom Thibodeau was not averse to making changes, but it was always kind of at a set time. Now, when you look at Mike Brown really only made substantive changes to the Kings last season. Right now, he toyed around in the preseason. He took out Kevin Huerter for Duarte, I believe, back in October 13, 2023. But last year, when the Kings, they struggled coming out the gate, 9-12, start the season. If I remember, I think it was 9-12 to start the season. But they went on that really bad stretch, and they were starting Keegan Murray, DeRozan, Sabonis, Fox, and Huerter. They took out Huerter for Malik Monk. But honestly, the Kings just really didn't have the rotations that would fit what Mike Brown's trying to do. He's trying to get some defense, and he's always putting out messages really about, not necessarily about Huerter, but kind of put out there that look, seeking more defense, blah blah blah. And so you try to get that compliment in, and he just really never had the roster to really get that replacement or get that defensive cover for such an offensively minded team. And again, rotation is going to be important early on. He starts to tinker and see what exactly works, right? He's tried 5-out offenses with the Kings to no avail. He's tried to put in more defense at the wing positions to varying degrees of success. So it's going to be really important to see exactly how does he tinker with this Knicks lineup, even in the preseason, right? Does he go back to Josh Hart? Josh Hart, who's kind of, in some regards, I don't know if you say ill-fitting, but he's not necessarily the so-called Mike Brown, a prototype in terms of a guy who can either score or defend at a really high level. He's kind of more of a connector, rebounder, which can still bode well for his offense, right? A guy who can move the ball, can get it to the off-ball guy, can set the screens, set the down screens for players, things of that nature. But it's going to be really important to see what rotations work best, not just starting lineup. We're talking about when it comes to what comes in when Brunson's sitting on the floor, right? Tom Thibodeau typically 6 minutes in, he brings in either Cat or but it'd be Cat or Brunson, but typically Cat, take Cat out and whatnot. How does he change with that? How does Mike Brown change with the bigs in his lineup, especially with Mitch Robinson finally being healthy to start the season? How does he think around these lineups and then get into the bench? Which young guys step up? Ariel Purdy, obviously he got really good looks in the summer league. Kolek, does he get minutes? Pacome, does he get minutes? And how those minutes going to be split with some of the bigger vets on the squad, right? Trying to mix in that defense with the offense. Something that he's tried to do with the Kings, like I said, to varying degrees of success, mostly on the bad or mostly on the negative. So it'll be really important to see how these things happen early on, not just in the preseason, but also obviously going into the regular season. Another thing that we have to talk about, Jalen Brunson. Jalen. Does Jalen Brunson buy in early to the program? Now, I'm not trying to start nothing with Jalen Brunson. That's my son. You already know that's my done life, right? But we're talking about a guy who's on the precipice of being recognized, fully recognized. Well, he's recognized one of the top point guards in the league, right? You see people have the list of, take a drink if you hear a player better than Brunson, right? Suit to Nick for sending me that video, Nick G. So he's up there. But we talking about like top 5-ish best players in the league overall. He wants to start sniffing up there, right? And you talk about a guy who took a sweetheart deal to help the Knicks. And look, Tom Thibodeau was his guy. Say what you want, even if it comes out down. But Tom Thibodeau was a guy that really allowed this guy to be who he wanted to be in terms of his lead point guard, right? Always relied on him, always leaned on him to get the scoring going, to kind of lead this team, to play the really react, to make the right decisions on the court. Now you have Mike Brown, who's even saying, not necessarily attacking Brunson at all, but he's putting out there, hey, Brunson's talented, blah, blah. We can have this multifaceted offense, blah, blah, offense that moves and blah, blah, blah. I don't say it's coded language, but you could hear like, because typically if you really like a play, like, Giannis, blah, 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 blah. And not saying Mike doesn't like him, but it's like, I like as a player, but I want you to buy into my off-ball offense, right? Like I said with De'Aaron Fox, what it was with De'Aaron Fox was that De'Aaron Fox's usage, if you look at his usage in the first 2.5 quarters, right? It dipped relative to his usage in quarters before Mike Brown got there. And then in the fourth quarter, just jumped up to 31%. Before Mike Brown got there, it was like 20, it was like 29, 29, 29, 29. It was just even, right? Heavy on-ball type of guard. But Jalen could play on and off the ball, right? Just because you're playing off the ball doesn't mean you're not scoring or being effective, right? Does Jalen Brunson buy into not having the ball in his hands? Now, remember last year, very interesting last year when Cat obviously came to the Knicks, there's a whole thing of these guys meshing. Now, I remember by the third game, even right, we had some concerns with, how those two guys were meshing. The third game was against the Cleveland Cavaliers, where we should have won. Cat was playing relatively well, and Brunson just tried to play hero ball. I would say he lost that game for us. Brunson, that's my guy, that's my son, but he lost that game for us. But after that Cavaliers game, all the way up into that OKC game, I think it was January 3rd, I always talk about this. The Knicks had some of the best offensive play from the whole team that we've seen. They went 22-9 in that stretch from the Cavaliers game to the first OKC game, right? They were before the Cavaliers game. They were 17 to score. Obviously, it's only 3 games, right, to the season. But after that, they were fifth in scoring offense in terms of points per game. During that stretch, you saw Mikal Bridges, you saw OJ Anunoby, Cat put up some of their best numbers. Mikal Bridges to that point, that 22, I said 23-9, but 23-9 stretch, 18.4 points, averaging 50% from the field, 36% from 3, a plus minus of 8.8. OJ Anunoby, 17.2 points, 48.1% from the field, 36.5% from 3, or 6.2 attempts a game. By the way, Mikal Bridges' 3-point shooting was on 7 attempts a game. OJ Anunoby, 5.1 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block. Mikal Bridges for the other stats, 3.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.2 steals. And then Karl Towns also putting up some great numbers, 25.6 points a game off of 55% shooting from the field, 43.1% from three, putting up 14.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, to go with zero point 0.9 steals, 0.9 blocks. And then Jalen Brunson, my done life, 25.4 points a game, 48% from the field, 39.5% from three, three rebounds, 8 assists a game, plus minus of 6.2. Cat a plus minus of 7.9. OJ Anunoby had a plus minus of 7.6. I know I'm all over the place, but what you're seeing by those guys, I mean, you saw Cat and Brunson finally become, not finally, but they became literally, statistically speaking, when you look at the points per possession and pick and roll play type, they were the best in the league, right? For a good portion of that first half, but a lot of that being first, them Bryson being the first in pick and rolls from that stretch, right? So sometimes it's like with Brunson, you almost got to let him roam and get and make and allow him to understand it. Now, is Brunson okay with the usage dipping? Him playing the back seat, him maybe even sitting? Because again, Mike Brown, something that he's gotten demonized for is over tinkering with lineups, the wrong rotations, wrong lineups, taking out guys when they're hot. So many people say Tom Thibodeau was done. Now, and Mike Brown has been accused of doing the same thing in Sacramento, right? So is Brunson okay with that? Does Brunson maybe draw, I don't want to say some animosity, but a certain way, a certain feeling if Josh Hart, his guy, is not being put in certain positions, right? Now, does he utilize him heavily as the first playmaker, whatever you want to call it, off the bench, or facilitator off the bench, away from Jalen Brunson? Does his minutes dip? Does Mike Brown not find as much usage in a guy like Josh Hart? Does that rub Jalen Brunson the wrong way? And how much? And it's not just Jalen Brunson. Also, Cat's going to be asked to do a lot of what Sabonis did at that pinch, low post. Something that we know that Cat, even though he can be highly effective, sorry for my eye, can be highly effective, doesn't necessarily like to do. Doesn't like to be in those trenches like that, right? So does the system rub these guys the wrong way? Do they try to do their own thing? If they try to do their own thing, maybe not necessarily all the way, but if they try to play their game, right, does it lead to winning basketball? Because again, this team is right on the cusp of getting to the championship game or the championship series. So they might look at it and say, look, this is not working. And remember, even after that, Mikal Bridges struggled after that stretch offensively after the OKC game, right? So it could be like, hey, your system, it ain't working. Even while these guys are missing shots, guys' legs are dead. OJ Anunoby, knock on wood, doesn't happen. But do these guys push back against some of these changes, right? So the first 10 or so games are going to be uber important for the Knicks. Maybe even more than that. I would say the first 10, 15, 20 games are going to be extremely important for the Knicks. And granted, we play some weak teams, so that should help. But after Cleveland and Boston, who's not necessarily, they're weaker than last year. But you have Miami, Milwaukee, man. But you have Chicago twice, Washington, then Minnesota, Brooklyn, and Memphis for your first 10 games. So it's not the easiest. I'd probably say it's like tinkering on average in terms of strength of schedule, I would say. And then even after you got Miami, Dallas, Orlando, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston for the next 20 games. So it's not the craziest of gauntlets, I would say, in terms of overall games. I think Orlando's going to be tough. I still think Dallas is going to be tough with guys coming back healthy. Even with a hobbled KD. I said KD, excuse me, AD, and that squad. Miami is always going to give us a tough out. Like I said, Orlando, much improved offense with them bringing on Desmond Bane, and they're again one of the best defensive teams in the league. But you got Brooklyn several times in that stretch. Charlotte, I don't think Milwaukee's as strong. Toronto, with Brandon Ingram, I don't fear them as much. Boston's a lot weaker versus last year with Tatum being out. So this team has a lot of time to get that offense down packed in terms of, finding their rhythm. And then also on defense, right? Buying into the Brandon O'Connor defense, which, again, I believe he's going to be heading, obviously. But they brought him over. I think some of the philosophies, like I pointed out in the video, some of the things they're going to bring over from the Clippers, JVJ. Some people think, it's going to be reprieve from Thibodeau. Maybe less minutes, but in terms of intensity, in terms of tag defense from the weak side, wing player, if the screens are set through the middle of the key, through the top of the key, it's going to involve a lot of responsibility, a lot of awareness. And Mike Brown doesn't like guys who miss their assignments, guys who are not focused. That was one of the complaints with guys like Keon Ellis, right? So it's not going to be cherry. It's not going to be sweet just because we're switching away from Tom Thibodeau defense. Maybe less minutes, but your intensity, your focus better be there because it's one of the Achilles heels, one of the things that led to his downfall in Sacramento. And then last but not least, the thing we got to answer, does Mike Brown go public in terms of some of his criticism with players, right? Now, granted, he's come out several times against De'Aaron Fox about his defense. De'Aaron Fox stated that he didn't have much of a problem with him doing that, but we know that they can run plays the wrong way. We know that these guys do not like to be called out to know, especially the New York media. Sacramento's different. You could probably name the only 2-3 writers, no offense to Sacramento, who covering the Kings over there. No offense to Sacramento. New York, you got a gauntlet. Then you got the podcast, you got the content creators, you got a whole bunch of people who are getting this, I don't say notoriety, I don't know what you call it, but these players are listening. So you come out and say, hey, Jalen Brunson got to do better on defense. Karl-Anthony Towns got to do better on the screen defense. You come out and say, do you lose a locker room doing that? The all-in philosophy that Mike Brown has preached has come to fail him in the past. It didn't work in L.A. It rubbed people the wrong way in Sacramento. Even I thought he was wrongly fired. But does he rub players the wrong way? Like I said, Josh Hart. Where does he fall into things? Does he go away from Mitchell Robinson? How does Mitchell Robinson feel about this, especially in a contract year? Guys gonna be looking for minutes and use, especially coming out healthy to start the season. Young players, these guys. We gotta play Eric Purdy, and I like the young players. Eric Purdy, Pacoma. I think they're ready. Where do guys like Kolek fall into place? Does he criticize the young players? Does he come at them for not so-called doing this and doing that? Tom Thibodeau's a black box. No one knew. It's just, hey, if this young player's playing, that means that Tom Thibodeau likes him. Unless he really comes out and says something, but it's typically coded language. Mike Brown's pretty direct compared to past coaches. How do these guys respond to Mike Brown, who's seen as an outsider, who's had a bunch of coaches that he's just put together, as good or valuable as they may be? A lot of these guys were not his original picks. Right? Do we see a Darvin Ham, Terry Stott situation where the assistant coaches are garnering more of the respect from the players than the head coach themselves, the new head coach, right? Not Darvin Ham, Adrian Griffin, right? Do we see a situation like that played out in Milwaukee? Shoot, even with Darvin Ham lost the locker room. Do we see where you have players that say, hey, we wanted Chris Gent to coach the Lakers? Once Darvin Ham kind of lost, because he was basically running the offense or running the plays and putting all the intricacies and complexities into the offense to make it effective, even if it wasn't executed right. Go and look at some of the forums. These players these fans wanted Chris Gent over Darvin Ham. So there are a lot of moving parts, right? I don't think it's just as clean as saying, hey, we're going to look at this. The schedule's blah, blah, blah. I just think that you have to look and say the first 15, 20 games and include the preseason as well, too. Rotation going to be uber important. Does Jalen Brunson buy into the program? The rest of these players buy into the program, both on offense and defense. The all-in philosophy, does it wear thin with certain players? And which players is it? Because everybody's not playing. Everybody's not playing. And you bring in a player like a guy like Ben Simmons, does he ruin that philosophy in the locker room? Granted, Ben Simmons is not the Ben Simmons of yesteryear. But, hey, locker room guys are locker room guys. Sometimes it's better bringing a guy that's been there already, Landry Shamet, who's going to go out and he may shoot 30% from three through 90% of regular season. In the last month, start hitting shots and the players start hitting shots, but he's going to try to give all out on defense. He may make a mistake here and there, but that he's going to buy in. He's going to shut up. He's he's going to put the lunch pail type of guy, go to work. Ben Simmons, and I'm going to have a full video breakdown on this when I do the preview for the season, but for right now, when you look at the win-loss expectations last year, you're 51-31. I think looking at this team and some of the happenings or occurrences that's happening, it's a lot of redundancy. With the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics basically retooling and breaking down that squad after Jason Tatum's injury, the Indiana Pacers losing Tyrese Halliburton to injury. I do think Orlando Magic going to be a lot stronger team this season. The Cleveland Cavaliers, to me, their regular season hoes, they really don't put any fear in me. They losing Ty Jerome, I think, is actually bigger than what people may expect or originally expected when that trade happened. I really do think the Knicks could be a 60-win team. Now, I think it'll probably edge out somewhere around 55 wins, 56 wins, but I'm not surprised if this team hits their rhythm and their stride early or soon enough. I think this team could easily be a 60-win team. I just think that we have too much. Look, we're still really front-loaded, but you could count several games last year. Like I said, you could talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers game. We could talk about at least the first OKC game that we should have won. There are just several games that we left on the table. The Charlotte Hornets game that we lost to a bum-ass Charlotte Hornets team. We lost some games to some pretty bad teams, right? And granted, every year a team loses some teams. They lose to teams that they shouldn't have lost to. But I think the Knicks did leave some on the table, especially against the so-called elite teams. I think, again, Cavaliers should definitely be OKC. We should have had one. Celtics, I think we make some of that ground up this season. Maybe not OKC, but definitely Cavaliers, definitely the Celtics. And some cleanup on some of these terrible teams that we've lost to. But I do think the Knicks do edge out around 55 wins, 56 wins should definitely be that's probably my bet going forward, barring any new happenings or occurrences, new signings, something that happens, or injuries, knock on wood, that occurs to the Knicks or to any other key teams in the Eastern Conference. But those are my thoughts, guys. Let me know your thoughts, comments. How do you feel about the schedule, the cup games you think we're going to win, that we could win the cup this year? Definitely be a benefit to the young players to get some more cash in their coffers. How do you guys feel about Jalen Brunson, Cat, some of these star players buying into the system? When do you think these guys catch rhythm, both on offense and defense? Who's in and out of the doghouse already? Not already, but who do you think will be in the doghouse? Who do you think is going to be favored by Mike Brown? Young players, older players, vets. Who do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts, your comments on this schedule release. Your boy Gmo, lead your Knicks. I appreciate you. Peace, Lou. God bless.